Welcome to Sherlock Holmes, where we talk about cold cases you haven't even heard about. Today, we'll be speaking about 5 cold cases that not even the chief could solve. Get your claws sharpened and let's solve this mystery. We will begin with France. Louis XIV of France is what you think about when you're asked the example of absolutism. His victims were the nobles and poorer citizens of France. And I hear you all asking, what's his motive? Well, don't worry, because I have figured out the perfect motive. He wanted to consolidate royal authority in France and had 3 major crimes he committed. The first is building the Palace of Versailles, which housed the nobles to spy on them. It was also to flaunt his wealth with the amount of gold and gardens. But his rich spending caused the French to be in severe debt in the future. Now to his second crime. He revoked the Edict of Nantes, which gave religious freedom to Huguenots. He allowed violence against Protestants, even destroying their churches and schools, then banning the practice altogether. But this caused the French economy to depress due to skilled Protestant workers fleeing due to fear of persecution. Well, he can't be mad. He asked for it. Now the final crime, pretty important one too. He left Jean-Baptiste Colbert 1619 to 1685 to deal with the finances, whom had a vision to unify France's economy. He pushed mercantilist policies to favor French trade and build the French industry. Louis XIV also improved transportation to make the country one big unit. As a result, Louis XIV was not only a stronger king, but made a more powerful France and unified country as well. Now, on to his tool of powers. King Louis XIV used both religious and military powers. He used religious power by using divine right. Divine right states that the king is chosen by God and everyone must listen to him because of that. It was very popular for this era. He also used his military power by creating stronger standing armies, but this caused him to raise taxes because he needed to fund the military. So this put stress on poorer citizens whom were already struggling. They hated him so much that they cheered when he died. Crazy, right? But now, we are going to backpedal. We will talk about Cardinal Richelieu. He was before Louis XIV, and he lived from 1585 to 1642. He actually isn't a monarch like the rest. He's a cardinal, whom were high-ranking officers in the Catholic Church. He worked alongside Louis XIII, who was quite corrupt. His main motive alongside Louis XIII was to restrain noble power. Quite similar to Louis XIV, one of his 2 main crimes was encouraging mercantilist policies, wanting to grow the economy. And his second crime is establishing a system of royal authority, and the way he did it was using his political power. He was a Secretary of the State and right-hand man to King Louis XIII. And a quote to back this up is, "Secrecy is the first essential in affairs of the state from Testament politic." Now the file for France is over. Why don't we move on to Russia? We will begin with Louis XIV, biggest fan. Peter the Great. He found a lot of inspiration off of the Sun King, even copying the guy. But we'll talk about that later. He lived from 1682 to 1725, and his main motive was to modernize Russia. And his victims were mainly the nobles and those who lived in St. Petersburg. Very specific, but you all will see what I'm talking about very soon. Now, on to his big 3 crimes. He enforced service nobility, which states that nobles had to serve the Tsar, which is the ruler of Russia. This meant to keep the nobles' power at bay. His second crime is the Great Embassy. It was a grand tour of Western Europe, which was made to learn about the West. He traveled incognito and refused to be recognized as he even dressed as a member of his own entourage, although it is doubtful that he fooled anyone because of his great height. I guess being tall doesn't have all of its perks. People say it has. Hey. Now on to a big crime he committed. The Great Northern War that began in 1700 to 1709. It gave Russia territory along the Baltic Sea, and it created St. Petersburg. It was meant to be a window into Western ideas and to have a warm water port. He used his military power to reform the military, causing him to have help gaining St. Petersburg after he failed once. A quote that is quite a good example is, "We need Europe for a few decades. Later on, we must turn our back on it. basically saying that they'll use Western Europe until they no longer need it and are powerful. Now, let's talk about someone who's terrible. Ivan the Terrible, also known as Ivan IV. He ruled from 1533 to 1584. His main motive was to get Russia out of a medieval state, and his victims were mainly nobles. His first crime is actually the same as Peter the Great. All nobles had to serve him or military to keep their land intact, and land was a big thing back then. And his second crime was transforming Russia into a fledgling empire. And his main tool of power was political, as he was telling the nobles to serve him or get their land stolen, which no one wants. Now on to England, who just can't seem to make up their mind. We will begin with Oliver Cromwell. He lived from 1599 to 1658. His main motive was to make England Puritans and remove Charles I from power, and his main victims were royalists or anyone who supported the king, and people who had fun. His first crime is setting in place strict Puritan rules. People couldn't even go to theater or enjoy amusement. I can tell he never gets invited to parties. And his second crime was executing King Charles I. His tools of power was political mainly, as he enforced the strict rules and used King Charles I, death to be in charge. And now, on to the interesting bunch, King William and Queen Mary. Their reign was from 1689 to 1702, and their main motive was to secure Protestant ruling in England, and their victims were most likely Catholics, but their rule was dubbed the Glorious Revolution. Their first policy was signing the Bill of Rights. Swearing under oath, they'd govern the people of England. A direct quote from Invitation to William of Orange states, "Ahem. We have great reason to believe that we shall be every day in a worse condition than we are, and less able to defend ourselves. And therefore we do earnestly wish we might be so happy as to find a remedy before it be too late for us to contribute to our own deliverance." This is Parliament asking for William of Orange to rule, as they were deeply troubled of a Catholic monarch to rule. Their second crime was killing off divine right. When they came into rule, it was essentially dead, even more so when they signed the Bill of Rights. And their third crime was how they did a bloodless transfer of power. William and Mary weren't blood-related at all, yet still took the throne. They used social power to commit these atrocities. Their social status as Protestants made Parliament want them to be king and queen. We only have 2 more cold cases left, so get a drink of water. This cold case, we will talk about Spain. We will actually begin with the decline of power. Spain in the 16th century was rich and dependent on the New World. But then, in the 17th century, the economy began to decline. The many wars with France took a toll on their money, and trade began to decline. Then, in 1715, they were now classified as a second-rate power after the Spanish War. I guess the saying is always right. The higher you are, the harder you fall. Now on to Philippe Ayayi. His main motive was to protect Catholic faith and fight religious enemies. He reigned from 1556 to 1598. His first crime was trying to invade England. He didn't like how England was under Protestant rule, so he set out the Spanish Armada, but it backfired terribly. His second crime was the war with the Dutch. The Dutch revolted against Spain due to his strict Catholic rule. This was a long and expensive war. Eventually, Spain gave up giving Dutch independence. His third crime was gaining Portugal. It gave temporary wealth and power. His tools of power were religion and military. Now, on to our last cold case. Frederick William was the ruler of Prussia. His main motive was to make Prussia a dominating power, and his victims were the Prussian peasants. His first crime was building a large army. He believed that a strong military was an essential component to the success of any ruler. He first created a strong and disciplined military, which would eventually become the 4th largest in Europe. His second crime was that he didn't make nobles pay taxes. He made the peasants pay them to keep the nobles happy. And his last crime is he wanted to please the Junkers because they were key to attaining power. His plan worked to perfection as the Junkers swore allegiance to Frederick William I, making his power absolute. His tools of power was taxation. Finally, Maria Theresa. She rules from 1740 to 1780. Her main motive was to preserve Habsburg land. Her main victims was Prussia. Her first crime was improving the Austrian economy, by ending trade with Bohemia. Her second crime is her unable to best Frederick William II, and her last crime is how she expanded the Austrian Empire. Now time for the verdict. With all the evidence I could find, I believe France is the one responsible. France was the main focus of absolutism, such as the Palace of Versailles, and many other countries copied off their work too. Russia used France's ideas of mercantilist policies to help the economy. But Peter the Great and Louis XIV are very different. Peter the Great went on an embassy to learn more, while Louis XIV wasn't learning. France also used divine right, which many monarchs followed, just like James I in England. I hope you all enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you soon.